Let's briefly just examine the state of the Arabian Peninsula before the Prophet was born. Arabia was this isolated region, primarily because of its geography. It's a desert. There's no permanent river there. Like in Egypt, you have the Nile. In Iraq, you have the Tigris or Euphrates. There were civilizations in Egypt because of the river. There were civilizations in Babylon, Iraq, because of the rivers. But not in the Arabian Peninsula. Why? Because most of the people were nomads. Rainfall was scarce. You did not have really any rivers. It's a very rugged terrain, mountains and stones and rocks. So it's difficult to build a city. Mecca was the most important city. But around Mecca, all you had was Bedouins and nomads who would always change their location, going from one place to another place. Just, foraging for food and looking for water. So because they were isolated, they were relatively safe from the influences of the major empires of the time. What were the two major empires of the time? The Roman civilization or empire and the Persian empire. The Persian and the Roman empires, they're like these Arabs in their backward societies in the desert. There's no civilization there, no big cities. We don't care about them. We're not interested in them. And hence the Arabs were largely isolated. They were not even influenced by their beliefs. They had their own pagan practices, and the Persians were not interested in spreading their religion there. The Romans were not interested in them. Nobody was interested in them. And that's why they were not really aware of all these ideas and beliefs out there. They just had their basic beliefs and ideas. So this was the state of the Arabian Peninsula. And by the way, many people, like some Jews, they came to the Arabian Peninsula fleeing the persecution of the Roman Empire. Because the Romans were Christians, they persecuted the Jews. Some of them had to flee Palestine and the Holy Lands. Some of them settled where? In Yathrib, around the city of Medina. Why did they choose Medina to settle there? So yes, they came to Arabia because Arabia was safe for them from those empires who would persecute them and kill them. But why specifically Medina? Does anyone know?
It's mentioned in their books that the Prophet would come.
It was mentioned in the Torah that the final messenger of God would emerge from the mountains of Medina. That's why they came and settled there. And the Quran in one verse tells us that whenever the Jews around Medina, they would be attacked, persecuted, the Arab pagans would give them a hard time, what would they say? They would say, have patience, the Prophet will come, we're waiting for him, and we'll gain victory. That gave them patience. That's why the Quran says they knew the messenger like they knew their own fathers. Because all the descriptions of the Prophet were mentioned in the Torah.
Their own sons,
Abna'ahum, or their fathers. Their sons or their fathers. They knew the Prophet very well. But what happened? When the Prophet came to Medina, as we shall see in the Prophet's life, for two reasons they rejected him. Number one, they thought that the final messenger of God would be from their lineage, from the lineage of Prophet Ishaq. He would be from that line. Once they realized he's an Arab from the line of Ismail, they're like, no, we're not going to follow him. That's number one. Number two, the Jews, they were influential in Medina. The economy was in their hands. They were prominent. When the Prophet came to Medina and people started surrounding the Prophet and he became important, he took the spotlight from them and the spotlight became on him. They didn't like that either. So for these two primary reasons, they started fighting the Prophet and they rejected his message, except a few who embraced the religion of Islam. So we see that the Jewish people, they came to Arabia in that time, in that era, fleeing the persecution and waiting for the messenger of God. Now Mecca was very important at that time. Why? Because it housed the Kaaba, the symbolic house of God. Who was the one who built the Kaaba? Adam alayhi salam. Ibrahim rebuilt it, and he called the people to do the Hajj. So Mecca was an important economic and religious center. All these pilgrims would flock to Mecca to do their pilgrimage. Even the non-Arabs, Hindus would come and they would do the Hajj in Mecca. Yes, they would consider the Kaaba holy. There's a story to it. Some Persians would come. Some people from, Eastern Rome would come. So it was an important financial and religious center. And the Arabs loved Mecca. Why? Because they made money. It gave them prestige. It gave them religious prominence.
So then I have a question. As people would do pilgrimage before Islam, there wasn't Hajj like we have it now. Some would hold those statues and hold their idols. What about for the people that were from the people that were living there? Was this for everybody who did this? Was this like a common practice?
So the Hajj in Arabia was a common practice, that nearly all Arab tribes would come to the Hajj and they would do the Hajj. Each tribe in their own way, of course, but they had adulterated the Hajj. They had changed it, corrupted it. They would, come seek the blessings of their idols. Some of their women would come naked going around the Kaaba. So each tribe had their own rituals. But the idea of the Hajj, that you come to the house of God and you worship God. Now they worshipped God and the idols. They ascribed partners to God. They worshipped the idols and they also worshipped Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Arabs, by the way, they believed in Allah. But what they did is they just added idols and they worshipped the idols as well. So yes, the pilgrimage did exist, but not the same Hajj that Prophet Ibrahim called to. They had changed it throughout the centuries and throughout the ages.